Hello. My name is Jakash Kapin, and this is another of the series in Conversation, where we get to talk to one very special member of our community, discuss their work, discuss their practice. I'm currently in Slovenia, where it's very dark, and in a couple of moments, we're gonna chat to Mo Clark, who is across the ocean. We'll see if it's already dark where she is. Today, we're gonna be discussing voice as land and ceremony. And as always, this is also a warm invitation to visit thewellvocal.com and to become a member and join us and join the growing vocal improvisation community. So, without further ado, let's see if Mo is ready.
Yay!
Hello.
Hey, Tensei.
Can you hear me well?
I can hear you good. Can you hear me good?
Yeah, I'm without headphones this time in solidarity, you know?
Look at us.
Of course.
Free the ears,
So
free the mind.
yeah, I'm missing the earrings though. I'm gonna work on that next year.
Yeah,
Next year. It's
my
just you see and wait.
moon earrings, in honor of all.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. Thank you for joining. So I know that you have an idea for the start with the smudge. So
Yeah.
would you like to say
I
something
yeah.
about it or just do it?
Well, I was gonna just do it before coming on, but then I decided
Mm-hmm.
maybe to do it while we're here. This is my little medicine bowl. I don't know if you can see it. It's seen many years of traveling with me. And so, just to honor some of the things we're probably going to talk about and honor the spirit of how our voices are connected to our bodies and spirits and minds, I just wanted to start with a little smudge. So, this is how we traditionally, I guess, just call in all parts of ourselves, call in our guides into the conversation and into the process, the Kyoke Win. So this is sage that was gathered in the West Canada, currently based in Jojage, Munyang,
Mm-hmm.
in Haga, Mohawk Territory in Montreal. And it's cedar that was gathered on the edges of Lake Kisagami up in James Bay and Iuishti Territory. So I just want to, I guess, invite in all of our earth relatives into this moment, into this conversation, acknowledge all of our relations, living, past, present, future, yet to come. I want to say, kananaskomten kisemantu gagawi no aski, kananaskomten nibiawa ishkoteawa yutenawa asaniawa, thinking the four elements, newo toskayaganak, the four workers, the fire, the waters, the winds, the airs, and the earth, the stone beings. I want to call in and say thank you to the rain meets snow, the confused sky worlds, thunder bodies, thunder beings who are raining right now. It's December in Montreal. Thank all the waters of the land, the river, the streams, the creeks, the lakes, the mountain waters, the spring waters, the ocean waters, the waters in our bodies, the waters of the trees, the maple, the spruce, and the birch, and the waters of the skies, the vapors, the fogs, the rains, the snows. And I want to acknowledge all the winged ones, thinking of murmurations, thinking of the patterns in sky world, the migratory patterns of those who fly between worlds, those connections that we have to the winged ones and how our voices become like birds and take flight. I want to acknowledge all the four-leggeds, all who are burrowing, those who are in hibernation, including the turtles and the bear. And I want to acknowledge all the ones who are swimming in waters, all the whales, all the fish, all of the seabirds and all of the lake birds and all of our two-legged relatives. And just voicing and making space, because when we bring our hearts and our minds together, as the Mohawks say in the Thanksgiving address, then we become one. And acknowledging all of the lineage carriers of the work that we do in our lives, these creative practices and processes, these ancestral processes, these land-based and spirit-based processes, and how some of the conversation today is going to be calling in and calling on those knowledge keepers, those elders, those language keepers, language carriers, ceremonial beings and bodies, as well as the tools that we inherit, that we are these tools for listening, for seeing, for feeling. And so just a big kananaskomtin, kananaskomtinawa, wagutuin for kinship, sagitawin for love, kitamagitawin for empathy, kisewatsuin for gentleness, kindness. And for you, Yaka, for all of the good work that you do to mobilize the well, to activate the space of conversation, of care, of listening, of lifting our communities, and calling us into this well, and of course to Rhiannon and everyone who calls Rhiannon home and this work home from our many different relation points. So that's it. Kananaskomten. Hi, Marcy. How do you say thank you in your language?
You say hvala in Slovenian.
Hvala?
Hvala.
Hvala.
Yes.
Hvala.
Thank you, Mo. Thank you, Mo. So, thank you. You are many things. You're a multidisciplinary artist. You are a two-spirit singing thunderbird, which is my favorite line from your biography. You're a member of the Métis Nation of Alberta. You're a dedicated Plains Cree language learner. And I really want to start with right there, with language, you being in touch with language keepers. I remember last time I was in your home, you very warmly invited me to stay during the Murmuration Project, and I was present for a part of one of your lessons with one of your elders. And I just so loved just being present for that process, even though it was on Zoom, right? The others were on Zoom. You were learning the language, but it was so special to even observe that just from the corner. So my first part of the conversation, maybe we can delve into your relationship with the Cree language, how it started, was it always present in your life, and where do you sit with it now? Because you use it so beautifully and you place so much attention on language in general, I think, in your work. So I'll let you reflect on that in any way you want to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Fond memories of you being in my home and warming up my home with your energy and voice. Yeah, I started taking Cree. I started learning Nehiawe Win, which is what we say in the language, which is really the language of the four-bodied people. So to be Nehio, to be Plains Cree, I'm Métis, so I come from Plains Cree and Soto indigenous ancestry, but more so from Métis ancestry. So we're the people of the Red River, of Treaty One, of Manitoba in Canada, just to locate myself. But I grew up in Alberta, and I grew up really understanding that my relationship to the land was one of the primary kind of and home points for me. And through that relationship to the land, through the relationship to sitting around the fire, that's really where I learned to sing and learned to love singing, because I think it was probably one of the times with my family when we would really be in that kind of heart field of song. And it wasn't until like midway through my teenage years that our family started to identify and learn more about our Métis-ness, about our Métis and ancestry, and this is a large part due to colonization, the whitewashing, and the kind of elimination and the attempt to kind of override indigenous lineage as a way to protect oneself and protect one's family. And so when I started to learn more about being Métis and more about why I have these different relationships to land, to hunting, to berry gathering, to tracking, to really being able to orient myself on the land, that's when I started to connect more with the Métis Nation of Alberta. This was when I was living in Calgary. And later on down the road, after I participated in ceremonies and sweat lodge and pipe ceremonies, is when I started to kind of question, like, how could I connect even more, and how could I do so through language? And I heard a Mohawk elder say a prayer in Ganyangaha in the Mohawk language at a march here in Montreal. And I was just kind of taken aback. Like, there was both a of long feeling of loss, of
Mm-hmm.
not having connection in that relationship to language. And so I actually called up one of my aunties, and of course, Cheryl Rondell, and I told her, I expressed this desire to learn the language. And that's when she named, well, why don't you learn the language, but why don't you do it through song and through land? And so that's how my journey began. It was really with her generosity and kind of opening up the doorway, introduced me to Joseph Naitauhau, who's a Nahio storyteller, ceremonial, knowledge keeper, and language speaker. And so I found myself driving in a rental car from Calgary to just outside Saskatoon, Roberts, southern Saskatchewan. And, these are prairie roads. So it's like long, full stretches of highway, to meet this elder who I'd never met in person, to gift him tobacco and cloth, and to ask if he would teach me what he knows, or support
Mm-hmm.
me in this journey. And along that route, I pulled over to pop a squat because it's like 117 kilometers, no service, like these are Canadian prairies. And as I was about to put down tobacco for the land at this stop, I reached down to put the tobacco down, and I picked up 2 deer antlers that a deer had left there. And it's just been a constant process of discovery and of meeting the land through these protocols and traditional practices of making offerings, of working from a place of prayer, where before all else, we acknowledge our relationship to the cosmos and to all relations. And so we started a process that next summer in Katepwa, which is the Qu'Appelle Valley in southern Saskatchewan, which is where some of my Métis relatives got pushed out of the Red River into Qu'Appelle. There was a lot of forts and road allowances, which was basically like we were living off grid as we tried to flee like the incoming settlements and reserve systems and violence from the RCMP. So we started to walk the land, and we connected with elders from that territory to learn about the history and the lineage to that land and that space. And from those conversations and from those meetings, we started to explore like language and words that would speak about these different relationships that we were forming, that I was forming with the land and with other Indigenous people. And so it really is a land-based practice of learning. So it's interesting to then fast forward to the pandemic, where we started Cree and tea
Mm-hmm.
through an Cree knowledge keeper, Charlotte Ross, and Joseph Natal Howe was kind of the ceremonial elder at the time, and now Senapan Thunder. And I've never met Senapan in real life, but we sit down and we have tea and we smudge, and we get in deep, and she shares a lot of knowledge and a lot of understandings. And so then, this started to, how can I sing with my drum, and how can I, use the drum as a landscape, as a place to land, a place to remember, and a place to learn. And then slowly the language has been brought into more improvisational contexts and in collaboration with jazz and funk and folk musicians and Moroccan DJ. Just did a, and then most recently some of my master's work. And so another component of that, and then I'll stop talking because I could talk about it for
Yeah, of
um,
course.
is the spirit markers, is like the foundational, basically like alphabet of the
Hmm.
language. So different sounds that we sing in relationship to one another, but what are those foundational kind of seeds, or we call them spirit markers. And so it starts with a, I, U, A. And those are all based on our medicine wheel, and they're all based on a system of mapping relationality to the directions. And so when we sound particular syllables, particular syllabics, there is an orientation that's going on in the body, in the consciousness, in the spirit, that's also calling on, calling in different beings in creation, because everything has a sound and everything has a vibration. So even when we're singing vocables, which are the kind of call and response in some of our songs, like weheya, weheya, hey, oh, every single one of those sounds is connecting to a different part of creation. And so then, it just goes deeper and deeper and deeper. So when I improvise now in different contexts, it's like everything that we're sounding and everything that we're singing and everything that is coming through us in these different relationships, it's all connecting us to land and to different beings in creation, even if we're not conscious of it.
Hmm. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I think my next question is really about the relationship then with vocal improvisation. And we named this talk Voices, Land, and Ceremony. And ceremony nowadays it appears everywhere as a word, right? Or even ritual. So I'm asking for your for your thoughts on the word ceremony. How do you describe it? And then particularly, within Métis cultural context, does vocal improvisation always appear when there is singing? Maybe just to talk a little bit more about ceremony, and then from the outside, how would you describe the role of vocal improvisation in
Mm,
those cultural practices?
no biggie.
No big,
It's like,
just a small
these are
one.
they're like thesis questions. You're
Of
like,
course.
how to describe ceremony? What's its relationship? I love it, Yaka. And I'm curious how you describe it too. I think that ceremony is a living thing. It's a living practice. It's a verb. It's not a noun. Uh, we engage in ceremony. We are ceremony. I think varying forms that ceremony takes on with community and with ourselves and with our, ancestors and spirit guides. I mean, I will relate to like the first time I was ever inside a sweat lodge.
Mhm.
It's pitch black. We call it Matotsan, which is the crying lodge, or the place where you go to shed tears, to emote, to express, to release. And there are songs that get sung in the lodge. And when I first started to go to Matotsana, I didn't know many songs. And so it really required a different form of listening. And I'm always amazed at how within a ceremonial context, and I will get to vocal improv because I
Mhm.
think by ceremony, that we come into different forms of alignment and different forms of with one another, with our own bodies, with our own spirits. And I was always amazed at how easily I could get into the vocal pattern of the songs that others were singing inside a lodge, because I'm so open, because my spirit is online, and because I'm maybe not thinking so much about it. And it's like those geese, you just kind of take the tailwind of someone else's sound, and you become part of it, and you connect with it. And you know, you don't necessarily merge with it exactly, blend with it, and you are carried by their voice and their resonance, and that becomes how you learn those ceremonial songs. And I think it's the same with vocal improvisation, you know, and this practice of murmurations, where it's like you kind of only need to hear it once, but when you're next to the person, when you're standing with them, when you're in a container or lodge or ceremonial kind of holding, it's like we start to mirror, we start to become, you know, one body, one mind, one heart. And so that's when I think vocal improvisation becomes, because we lose sense of this individuality or this separation, and it really becomes, how can I say yes, and how can I say yes from multiple parts of me, that it's not just the mind making the decision, the body, it's the voice, it's the spirit. And how can we enter into these kind of altered states? And I don't even want to necessarily say it's altered, because I feel like, is that actually our natural state? And this is some form of kind of societal process where it's like, oh, you need to talk in a particular way, you in a particular way, but is actually murmuration, vocal improvisation, deep listening, sonic meditation, these practices, are those actually our natural states?
Yeah. I mean, I think they are, you know, in this conversation, being here, looking at the screen, thinking about what you're saying, feeling how most of my body is actually not engaged, you know, already tells me right now that this is not my natural state. And as you know, when we improvise in an embodied way, when we're not focused only on ourselves, but we have this idea of connecting with others and serving the music, that definitely feels like the most natural state to me. Where everything, you know, is kind of connected and also has like a clear purpose and an intention. And then I wonder, within those, let's say, sweat lodges, how much of the vocal, you know, exploration or expression is permitted to like veer from the song? You know, are there open sections? What is the musical? How would you describe the musical feel of it? You know, the musical texture.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say that it's necessarily improvisation in the same way that we understand improvisation from a Western lens. But I think that the songs, the way that the songs can be expressed and experienced with the drum, with the rattle, that there are layers of quote unquote unknown, that can be explored and felt and perceived. Musically, I wouldn't necessarily say that there's like a solo, you know, section and like somebody's coming in, like the intro. But I think that it's not happening necessarily vocally with our, you know, Western version of listening, but it's happening in other dimensions. And I think this is where like the improvising or the kind of ceremony isn't just happening from a human relational standpoint, but it's happening in response to and in relationship with the other players and the other kind of, you know, members of this ceremony, who are the stone beings, you know, our grandparents, who are the water beings, the medicines that you put, the fire outside the law, whatever's sky world, the earth that you're sitting on, you know, the feeling of being inside this kind of turtle shell womb. And I think that's where, when I consider my process of vocal improvisation and where it comes from in relationship to language, it's never separate from the land. You know, if that's walking the land, if that's being in a body of water, or if that's even with my drum as a tool towards receiving the song or listening for the next, you know, melodic structure, or the way a particular word wants to be voiced or sung. I consider that a land-based process. And I mean, vocal improvisation is a land-based process because we're using our
Our
bodies,
body is
and
the land.
this is my territory. So if I can be more free with how I'm able to access vocal improvisation through my body, this is land back. You know, like really, like colonial processes want us to be separate, want us to think and prioritize and privilege that the mind is where it's all happening and this is where it needs to be filtered. But what if it really is the sounding resonant field of the body and the spirit? And what if it isn't necessarily so much about the mind? And so that's what I bring into the workshops that I facilitate. And, you know, we draw from Vocal River and Rihanna's draw from Paulina Oliveros and the sonic meditations and deep listening, but then we also just draw from our own memories and knowledge of connection to the land and connection to the animacies that live around us, that are moment to moment, season to season, day to day. And so we bring the current like rain, gray sky, coming out of full moon energy into that studio setting or performance or improvisational space, and we start to map out and we start to navigate how can I sound with and from those relationships as well, and not just these relationships.
Yeah, and it's the core resonance. And, you know, going back to that idea in the ceremonial space, then it doesn't really matter. And a solo would never be a solo. You know, these concepts of like harmonizing or solo, they don't even exist, right? They're not there. Those are just some things that you leave behind. And then maybe when you return into your rational mind, then you can start thinking in those terms. But that maybe is coming back to the verb of the ceremony, right? Like those things actually are not present because you're so much more integrated and the mind is not, you know, ruling your perception of what is happening and what your focus should be. And from my like side of my research, I'm just beginning to look at you know, older ways of singing from the Balkans and especially the mountainous regions. And you know, they require such letting go in terms of tuning. You know, my idea of what is in tune or microtonality or these little, you know, details, they're so different to how the idea of music is presented to you in formal environments. And there's so much there, this idea of the zooming in and then seeing how much, you know, the song actually changes every time. So the song might still be the song, but there's so much improvisation within how a phrase is said or how a word is said. So it almost feels like it's microscopic improvisation, you know, more so than the one we are sometimes thinking about that does require then also like a different attunement process for us. So then onwards to the Murmuration Project. We have to mention it. We were there in the studio space. I'm really interested in how you perceive how much of the ceremonial we bring into the space. How does that even work? Because we are a group of international artists. We have each our own cultural background. We don't have a, you know, specific set plan, form, but it seems to be that whenever we are connected, there is a sense that there's a collective archetype, a collective emotion. Something is going on that is powerful and something is drawing us into the center. And I know that it combines everything that we are, but I do not know what else to say about it or how to even approach it from which angle. But if you have any memories of that sense of, you know, what it is for you, would love to hear it.
Yeah, I mean, it's our, like, you know, I think of, I don't know if you've ever seen a Christy Belcourt painting. She's a beautiful Métis visual artist, Nehiawewen learner, land activist. And she does these beautiful paintings and often of medicines and plants and fish and all these relatives. And she almost always does them as like mirrors. And she basically says, and I've heard this from other elders, one of my elders, late Musham Bob Smoker, also said, like, everything that we have in the physical world is mirrored in spirit. And I kind of feel like murmurations is that. You know, we look at those birds and we look at these patterns and these joinings and these separatings and these coming back together, and it's like it's a sea, it's a swarm, it's a community, it's a collective. It's no one bird, but together they create this kind of oneness. And I really feel like that's what we were doing. We were like a physical, you know, kind of and spiritual manifestation of what's already happening up
Mm-hmm.
there, and clusters, and even like I'd say like even galaxies, like there's so many layers to murmurations. But I do think that it's like, what are the grounding frames and agreements that we've kind of all set? And that we also set with Gillis. How do we trust our gut? How do we move from the question and not the I think I know, I think I need to know? What if I don't know? And what if I allow the question to be what takes me in? And the discovery of how this might kind of come together to be what draws me into these different patterns, systems, soundings, shared resonance, co-resonance, as you're saying. And I think in some moments I will say that it was like really dysregulating me, and my
Mm-hmm.
like, this is so overwhelming. There's so much going on. So like, how can I also kind of take breath and just take a moment to be in the listening felt sense, and then allow that to then overflow or spill into whatever happens next. And it ultimately becomes ritual. And I have vivid memories of like just full immersive connected openings, like, and spaces for everybody to kind of experience like the holding and the being held from so many different positions and so many different points of direction and perspective. And I think in that way, it really feels like a peace building tool. And that's what our drums are. They're
Mm-hmm.
being as a way to bring peace, because when we are all gathered around that central point, when we are all drumming together, our hearts and our minds are one, our hearts beat together. And I think that's what murmuration is. It's this opportunity to experience like collective liberation through not knowing, but saying yes anyways, that brings about that mirror, you
Mm-hmm.
know.
Yeah.
Uh,
And there's that whole relationship to the group mind as well, to the whole, and how do we engage with it? Are we supporting it? Do we want to take a step back? Do we want to propose something in contrast? And also another thing that came to mind is that we were building so many landscapes. If you look at it visually, there were
mhm.
such diverse landscapes being built with the bodies that
Yeah.
were in its own right a very special thing to see. And if for anyone who's listening, just to make sure that you know what we're talking about the Murmuration Project, which started last year with Rhiannon and Margie Gillis as our directors. We met in Montreal for 2 weeks with 28 vocal improvisation artists from
Which is
many
also
different
like
countries.
cool. Like
Exactly.
cycle, when I think of outside of the turtle shell, like those systems and those possibilities for transformation, like how the numerology is also kind of embedded into this, like it gives so much possibility.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was incredible just to have that opportunity to go into an embodied process where we don't have a plan and it just has to happen, through improvisation and through voice. And hopefully, long may it continue. And we hope that there are many more conversations and, performances and workshops around it. And people can go to YouTube, type in Murmuration Project, and check also the video where Rihanna and Mark are speaking about it. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
and now on to the Two Spirit Drumming, the
Mm-hmm.
Indigenous Resurgence, your
Mm-hmm.
most current project. I think I saw maybe a precursor in the Botanical Gardens. I think I saw a sound installation when I was there that was related with this, but now it has gone to a whole new level with your recent research and residency. Maybe you have to kind of take a step back and start from the beginning and kind of say a little bit about Two Spirit Drum, about how it relates to your work and where is it at, and especially maybe getting to what you did in the recent residency.
Mm. Well, yeah, thank you. I'll just preface by saying this is my master's, like graduate
Mm-hmm.
research and thesis. So there'll be other more thorough documentations and conversations. I actually just had a beautiful lunch today. I received one of the social justice fellows at Concordia for this work, which really means that, uh,
Congratulations.
yeah, Thank you. I'm really excited and just feel so honored um, because it is social justice, but it's social justice through the lens of creation, of co-creation, and of collaboration with human and beyond human kinships. And that includes the drum, that
Mhm.
includes Waskik, which is how we say the big drum, like the big powwow drum, and then Tewagen, which is how we say just the hand drum. So I've been a hand drummer, a drum carrier for 15, 20 years now. And it's a big responsibility and it's a role that I have in community, which means if they need somebody to drum and sing, like you are drumming and singing for ceremony until the cows come home or the bison come home, you know? Like I
More
remember
so the
being at a
bison
and
than cows.
we needed somebody to drum and it was like, okay, here we go, like 3 hours later, you know. So that's when you really got to like tap into those other
Mhm.
states. um but yeah, so like I said earlier, you know, drumming and my relationship to Tewagen, to the hand drum, has been my land-based process, or part of my land-based process of gathering language, of exploring my own Métis two-spirit resurgence through relationship to the drum, through singing and sounding out our creation stories, celebrating our kinship systems, our ways of being, knowing through drum song, and taking that into different contexts and settings and institutions and communities, but then also singing for Two Spirit Kin at our Two Spirit Sun and in our Matotsan, in our sweat lodge, and being able to honor and uplift the relationships in real time in land-based ceremonial contexts. So I will say that it's research and creation, but it's also life work. Um,
Mhm.
so, so then through that, looking at reclamation of our relationship to drumming. And this is where it becomes contested because there are different nations who have taken on, and I will say adopted, primarily through Catholicism and the church and missionaries and residential schools and a lot of these colonial processes, who have developed a notion that women don't drum and non-masculine identifying male at birth people don't drum. And so I've come across these sticky situations numerous times as I've traveled around. And you know, you opened up with Two Spirits singing Thunderbird. My spirit name is Nigamo Pieseo, which I received in my second year of Sundance, and that's singing Thunderbird. So one of my gifts, but also one of my roles and my responsibility, is to make sure that I'm traveling around like those Thunderbirds, and I'm making sure that these songs and these practices are shared with our communities as a way to create emotional space and to open up for the peers. And so I've just had varying moments of traveling with the drum. One in particular, I was up in Dene Territory, up in the Northwest Territories, and I'm traveling as a storyteller and as a singer, and I've been invited to come and share. But then I've been told, well, women don't drum. And how do you reconcile that when that's my medicine? These are my gifts, these are the teachings I have. And so I back go down and I made a prayer and I just asked for support and to guide me so that I can do my best to take these gifts into community without receiving huge backlash. And I just did that. And I, you know, politely and kind of as kindly as possible before a performance, I said, you know, I've been invited to come share, and these are my gifts. And my elders tell me that if we don't use our gifts, then we hurt ourselves. And so I'm going to respectfully share these gifts with you, acknowledging that these might not be the same beliefs and protocols of this land, but I'm not from this land. In the lands where I come from, this is what we
Mhm.
share. And I remember singing for that audience. And at the end, a group of old ladies, these old kookums, came up to me and they just said, "Thank you, my girl. We just, you know, we're celebrating Doris's 80th birthday. And we actually all came because we just started a drum group in their 80s. And they said, oh, we're called Granddaughter of the Moon. And they said we were given tobacco and we were asked to sing because there wasn't enough medicine that was coming from women. And I say that there isn't enough medicine, and we need to open space for more two-spirit people, LGBTQ. We call ourselves Tastawayaki Inuak, which are the in people, to share that medicine and to bring those gifts forward. Because if drumming really comes from the place that the drum was brought to us, and there's creation stories from that it was given to a woman, but there's different creation. It is a tool for peace building. And what we need so much in our communities, in our own bodies, and in our own voices is peace. We need balance. We need to bring the balance back. So for this master's work, it's about connecting two spirit roles and relationships and our gifts to our creation stories, to song, and to a big drum. And so just last month, I became the custodian and the guardian of a new big drum. It's bison, which is also really closely linked to our Métis ancestry and to the rematriation process of those animals, and how important that is for biodiversity. They're a keystone species, and everything that revolves around them is nourished by their existence. And so this drum comes from the bison, and it comes from cedar trees, which is one of our grandmother trees. And we were able to feast and birth this drum. And so we feed it bear grease and berries and tobacco. And we acknowledge that that drum is animate and alive, and that whatever we sing in relationship to that drum, may it be in a good way, and may it bring healing, and may it bring medicine for those who gather. And really centering the notion of Misawe Askik Pitakosil, which is Senapan Thunder's words from her mom, which is, it is resounding in the land. And so from its essence is to help us to be in right relation with the land. And if we can find ways to be more of two-spirit kin, of our in-between kin, and those who need to bring their medicine and their voices and languages, we can, create new songs that have language that isn't just woman, man, that's not just gendered, because a lot of our ceremonies have taken on gendered contexts. So to be able to be more fluid, to be able to be in a murmurational, relational space of, it's not about, what your gender is, it's about what your role is, and it's about what your gifts are. And this is how our communities always were. And so this is what the drum songs, in their essence, they're about reclaiming that circularity for our communities. So we're doing a big drum session on Sunday with our two-spirit community here to honor the solstice, and many more opportunities for people to come together around the drum, because it is a healing tool, and it's one of our ancestral practices for healing our four bodies, our hearts, spirits, minds, and bodies.
Yes. Thank you so much for sharing so openly. And just to finish off, yeah, music is medicine, singing is medicine. I really want to acknowledge, the breadth of knowledge that is held with indigenous communities, and how far we are currently, let's say maybe right now in the imperialist United States, the health department is for the first time, doing talks about music as medicine and how that's gonna, change in the future. But the gap is still immense. And there's so many stories woven into that gap. So I just, want to honor everything that you shared and how important it is. I want to invite people to check your work online, in person, see you, talk to you, sing with you, and just send out a prayer for that gap to become smaller, and for the practices that we are involved with, all of them, to be a tool for, that narrowing of the gap, for the, for the healing and for the justice that is needed in that process.
100%. Yeah. And I just want to acknowledge that beautiful work you were sharing about singing those mountain landscapes, and I know the caves, and going to the land to actually sing to the land. I remember one of my friends, we were gathering sage in Treaty 7 in my homeland in Dene territory, and I sang a song before we gathered. This friend turned to me and just said, you know, I think it's been a while since this land was sung to, and this land is happy. So not thinking that like going to the land is just for our benefit, but you sing to tree, you sing to water, like there's all those scientific notions, but we've known this for thousands of years, that the land heals through our songs and through our offerings of song. So how could we not inherently heal when we are doing that on and with collaboration with the land? So
let that be an invitation for everyone, especially with the upcoming winter solstice, if they're in the northern hemisphere, to go out there, sing to the land, to themselves, by themselves, with others. And thank you so much for this conversation. And I'm sure we're going to have another one very soon. Good luck with your work, and can't wait to hear the next music, the next thing that's going to be shared, and the next research article that at some point is going to crop up out of somewhere, even if it's through musical singing form.
Hi, Kananaskomtin Yaka, and the well for existing. This is such an incredible tool. And I just want to say, please, everybody, go sign up for the well and post your events and get in touch if you're in Montreal, if you're in Jojage, you know, for a circle sing or for a workshop. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mo. Hvala. See you soon.
Hi.
Goodbye.
Bye.